Hello there. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Anish Banerjee, and I'm going to be taking a little workshop that's titled Introduction to Coffee Brewing. I am not a barista or from the coffee industry. I'm just a coffee enthusiast, like I hope you will be at the end of this session today. Now, I did a quick Google search when I was asked to do this little workshop to get the sense of perception of what do people think about when they talk about coffee brewing. And I saw these really involved images that look very complicated to a person who perhaps doesn't know much about coffee. And I just want to tell you, this is not something that you should take very seriously. There are an infinite number of complications that you can introduce into the coffee brewing process, but coffee brewing in itself is extremely simple. And through a few quick, easy steps, you can get started in no time brewing coffee at home with the equipment that you already have without having to purchase anything new. Now, I want to talk about instant coffee first before I talk about brewed coffee because, rightly or wrongly, most people's introduction into coffee is through instant coffee. Now, there is nothing wrong with instant coffee in itself. It is a mass produced product, and within that, it has several grades of quality. I'm just going to quickly tell you about three large types of instant coffee that we do have. So perhaps you can make a more informed choice if you are a regular instant coffee drinker or you have in a situation where you have no other choice but to consume instant coffee. The first, of course, and the lowest grade is instant coffee that contains chicory. Now, chicory is not coffee, it is a completely different plant. And chicory based coffee only has trace elements of actual coffee inside it. It was designed to sell en masse, and the chicory, uh, it actually simulates the bitterness that high quality coffee is supposed to give on the lower notes. Uh, you can make out if coffee is made out of chicory. If you just pick up a little bit of the powder and crush it between your fingers, it crumbles into a very, very, very fine powder. There are absolutely no granules left. The next most popular type of instant coffee is spray dried coffee. It's meant for large scale production. What happens is coffee is exposed to high degrees of heat and water and steam, and the and that coffee juice that seeps down is dried using air. It's dried extremely quickly and with high compression. Now, what happens is when air is sprayed against it, a lot of the oils that are present within that liquid that come out evaporate. And as we know, flavor and aroma all come through oils. So, spray dried coffee will have a tinge of aroma and it'll have a bit of taste, but it'll lose a large chunk of it. And due to the fact that it loses a large chunk of those oils, generally it does not use high quality beans. Now, the best type of instant coffee that you can get is freeze dried instant coffee. What happens within that is once those coffee bean grounds are uh, seeped in water in high temperature steam and water, the resultant liquid that flows down is freeze dried at minus 40 degrees centigrade. And then once it's frozen, it's dehydrated in cold air and vacuum, and therefore that captures a lot of the oils within it itself. There's a lot of aroma and a lot of strength and a lot of flavor in freeze dried. So if you are to definitely determine the kind of coffee that you type of instant coffee that you are going to consume, I would strongly recommend you choose for freeze dried. And you can identify freeze dried by by the shape of the granules, right? It has a very long texture. It's very, very difficult to break between your fingers. The images on the screen are representative of those three types of coffee. So if you do have a choice within instant coffee itself, I would recommend you choose freeze dried coffee. And now I want to talk about for me what for me is real coffee, and that's brewed coffee. And I want to help you make world class brewed coffee right at home using simple everyday ingredients and utensils. I have a couple of specialist equipment, really entry level, available in the market for not a lot of cost. And I also have one hacky method that I'm going to show you that will allow you to go and make brewed coffee right this minute. Um, Now, what are the three important keys that you need to remember when you are making coffee, right? When you're brewing coffee? The first is the coffee bean itself, the second is the grind, and the third is the brew that you actually ultimately make. Now, the coffee bean is the single largest determinant of the kind of coffee that that you are going to consume at the end of the day. If you think about it, coffee is uh, at its base component supposed to be the coffee beans, water, and some people add a little bit of milk or cream. I am not a fan of that for reasons as I mentioned earlier. But at its base, it's coffee bean and water. Now, water, of course, on its own shouldn't have a lot of taste. It does vary based on region, but water is generally a constant, and you don't really have much choice on that front. But the important thing is the kind of coffee bean that you choose is a large determinant of what you consume. Now, coffee beans on their own can't be consumed, right? You can't really eat them. The flavor in it will be nothing like you expect when you consume them. What is done when coffee beans are cultivated is that they're removed from the plant and then they're dried. Once they're dried, they're roasted. So on the right, you see what dried green coffee beans look like. On the left, what they look like once they're roasted. Now, roasting is a very, very important process because it brings out the flavor within the coffee. At around 200 degrees centigrade, the starch inside those green coffee beans begins to break out and it starts releasing those oils. And those oils are what lead to flavor and taste and aroma. My recommendation would be that once coffee beans are roasted, try and consume them within 2 weeks because they keep releasing those oils into the atmosphere, and over time they keep releasing flavor until they become stale. So try and consume coffee within 2 weeks after it's roasted. There are three types of roasting: light roasts, medium roasts, and dark roasts. That, of course, is the degree and temperature to which they're heated and the duration for which they're heated. Now, light roasts give you fruity and bright tasting coffee. Medium roasts are very balanced and generally they retain flavor well, whereas dark roasts are intense and bold. The next thing that you need to think about is the grind. The grind essentially is how finely are these roasted beans crushed. The grind determines the brewing method that you will choose. Now, there are three basic types of grinds. There's a coarse grind, there's a medium grind, and there's a fine grind. Um when you grind coffee beans, a lot of carbon dioxide and other gases escape, and this keeps happening over time. So again, this is one of those reasons: the oils evaporating and the gases escaping that causes this coffee to lose flavor over time. And then finally, the third thing that you need to think about is the brew. What are the steps that you need to take up in order to get the perfect cup? There are three main methods that you can use to brew your coffee. There are pressure based brews, which are used in espresso machines and in coffee shops like Starbucks and Barista, Cafe Coffee Day, or Costa Coffee. The coffee that comes out of pressure brewed coffee is intense and powerful because it's exposed to a temperature, high temperature steam and water. The second is gravity based brewing, which is used in the pour over method, which I shall show you later. It's a very clean and bright cup because the method of brewing it gets rid of some of the base oils. So it's a very clean cup of coffee, and the oils don't paint your palate. And the paper filters that are used soak up a lot of those oils. And the third is immersion based brewing. Immersion based brewing is used in the French press, which is my favorite method of brewing coffee, or a cold brew method, which is another thing that you should look up if you are interested in brewing coffee and then storing and using it over time. It leads to a very, very bold tasting cup of coffee. So I'm going to show you two quick and easy methods by which you can brew coffee in your own house. I'll have to turn my camera a little downward so you can see what I'm talking about. So this right here is a French press. Now, French press uses the immersion method. You might have seen this in coffee shops. It's available online. There are several different categories, but you can find something that works within your budget. And of course, the second thing is the pour over. The pour over is a funnel in which we place our filter paper. The filter paper allows you to filter out the oils at the base level and also allows you to slowly brew your coffee. So it's gravity assisted, and as the water passes through the filter paper and the coffee grounds, it leaves the brewed coffee coming out from the bottom. So I'm going to quickly go get some hot water. So I'll be off camera for a few seconds. And before I do that, let me quickly explain how
the brewing takes place within both of these, right? So first, let's take the French press. The French press is basically a jar or a tumbler, and it has markings to indicate the amount of water that you're putting in. That's 100 ml, 200 ml, 300 ml, 400 ml. Now, how do you determine the amount of water to use per gram of coffee that you put? Generally, the rule of thumb is a 1 is to 17 ratio, whereby if you put 1 gram of coffee, you put 17 grams of water. I have a little spoon that's graded, that's marked for 7 grams when it's heaped flat, and I generally use two scoops of this, so that's about 14 grams of coffee, and I put about 240 grams of water, that which makes it exactly one large mug of coffee. Uh, now, in the French press, it has, of course, the outside tumbler and the jar, and it has the plunger. And the bottom of the plunger has filters, has a mesh filter. So, what you do is you put your coffee within the French press, the coffee powder, the coffee ground powder, and you steep it in water, the required quantity of water. Once it brews for about 4 to 5 minutes, all you have to do to separate the grounds from the coffee is you need to plunge it down. So if I can demonstrate before I actually show it to you, is you put your coffee, you put the required amount of water, let it steep, just sit on its own for about 4 to 5 minutes, and then once you're done, just plunge it down. The plunging process separates the coffee grounds from the coffee, and then all you need to do is grab your nearest cup and pour out the coffee. That's it. It's as simple as that. The second method that I'm going to show you is the pour over. Now, this is a fairly simple entry level pour over. And what you use with the pour over is a filter paper. Now, there are many different grades of filter paper. You can find these in large mass quantities on Amazon or your local retailer of choice. The filter paper that's considered to be the best is something known as the Chemex paper. If you can afford it, of course, you should try it. Otherwise, any coffee filter paper really does fine. One recommendation that I would have is wet the paper before you use it, just to get some of those latent flavors of the paper away, and therefore the coffee that you taste tastes only of coffee and nothing else. So what you do in a pour over is you place the filter paper within the pour over section. You place the coffee, a scoop or two of coffee here based on how much you're making, and you place it on top of your mug, uh, and then gently pour water in at the top. As the water, through the effect of gravity, steeps through, it'll brew your coffee and pour out at the other end through this small little hole at the bottom. So that's basically how coffee is brewed, and I'm going to now demonstrate it to you. So let's get both the French press and uh, the pour over into view here. I'm going to grab some of my coffee that I have acquired recently. Uh, let's remove the top of the French press. So I'm going to take one heap of coffee and put it into the French press. For this demonstration, I'm only going to make a small cup. That's about 125 ml. So that's about 7 to 8 grams using this job. It was a little over a heap. And I'm going to do the same now on the pour over. I've placed the filter within my pour over, and I do that again. I just run it. I play, and then I pour the powder out into the filter paper. There you go. Now, as you can see, the coffee is within the filter paper that's placed within the pour over. And similarly, on the French press, I place the coffee right at the bottom. And now we're going to go and get boiling hot water. Now, an important point to note is that you should never brew coffee with boiling water that's immediately off the boil. Boiling water is at near 100 degrees centigrade. At that temperature, you're going to scald the coffee. You're going to release a lot of different chemicals, most notably quinic acid, which leads to a more bitter, cloudier, muddier cup of coffee. What you want is something very clean, bright, and decipherable, where you can taste the notes and appreciate them. So, my recommendation is usually boil water and wait about 40 to 50 seconds. Even 30 to 40 seconds will do, really. In that short period of time, the temperature falls below 94, 95, and that's the perfect temperature to brew your coffee at. So, if you're going to give me just a few seconds, I'm going to go and grab the boiling water that I have right here.
So right, I now have some water that's just come off the boil. So it's the perfect temperature to brew at. It's been about 30 seconds. Uh, so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take my pour over. As I've shown you already, the coffee powder is inside the filter paper, and I gently first just place a little bit of water inside just to steep the grounds. The reason we do this is it's really hot water, right? What happens is there's a slight cooking process, and at this point, a lot of gases are released from the coffee beans itself. If you don't allow those gases to dissipate, it's going to affect the quality of the brew going forward. The water and the coffee grounds are not going to interact as well. So once you've let it soak up for about 10 seconds or 10 to 20 seconds on average, that's when you start pouring it in at a slightly faster rate. And that's perfect. Now, as you can see, the coffee is slowly moving downwards. The filter paper and gravity and the tiny little outlet are controlling the rate of flow downwards. So I'm going to set the pour over aside for now. And now I'm going to show you the French press method. So I put about 7 grams of coffee. So my goal now is to put about 125 grams of water. Again, we do the same thing. We pour a little bit of water, just let it sit for about 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds. There's a little bit of the bubbles that form on the surface, and you try and wait for those to just gently move away. Once you've about 10 to 15 seconds have passed, smells lovely. This part is called the bloom in coffee brewing. That's when the gases come out. It's quite lovely. Uh, Once that's done, you pour in the remaining water until you reach about 125 ml. That's because I'm using 7 grams. It's 1 is to 17. If you can change the ratio up, if you want something even stronger, you can go 1 is to 15 or 1 is to 12. If you want something lighter, you can go 1 is to 20. Really, the ratio is up to you. Once you do that, you just place your plunger at the top with the filter here and keep the filter a little above where the coffee is and just let it sit. Uh, the third method that I'm going to show you is something that you can literally try right now in your own house. It basically uses a tea strainer, also called a chunni. Now, I have a slightly fancier looking chunni here, but what you do, I'm going to use a transparent glass tumbler for this demonstration, is you place your hot water at the bottom and you place your coffee inside the strainer and you follow the exact same the methodology that you use in the pour over. You place a little bit of coffee. Once you've done that, you pour a little bit of water, just soaking up a little bit of the water in the ground itself, and then you pour the water into it. The water and the coffee in the tea strainer, which will be suspended within the water, will slowly brew. And after about 3, 4, 5 minutes, all you need to do, remove the strainer, chuck away the grounds, and you have a fresh cup of coffee right here. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but this is a quick demonstration of how this can work for you. Uh, it's a little early, but just for the sake of showing this, I'm going to demonstrate at the end in a French press. All you need to do is I'm doing this about 2 minutes too early, so it's not going to be a perfect brew. But to demonstrate, you just press down and separate. What this process does is the grounds are all the way at the bottom and the coffee is at the top. Similarly, uh, as you can see, all the water has poured out, and the cup of coffee that we have left, it's a strong, strong brew. Uh, I hope this quick demonstration was effective in giving you a quick introduction about the coffee world, and it encourages you to try brewing coffee on your own. Certainly, the tea strainer method or the chunni method is something anybody can try right now. All you need is coffee beans and you're good to go. I'm just going to leave you with a few quick tips that I believe will help you maximize your coffee experience. One is, as I said, never use boiling water. Just wait 30 to 45 seconds when it comes off the boil. Not everyone has a thermometer at home, a kitchen thermometer that will allow you to verify. 30 to 45 seconds should do it. This avoids the release of quinic acid and avoids scalding the coffee. Second is gently soak the grounds at the start. It just allows carbon dioxide and other gases to release, which aids the brewing process and the interaction between the coffee and the water. Third is, feel free to experiment. You know your own taste better than anybody else out there in the world. Try different beans, try different flavors, different flavor profiles. Find what you like for yourself. Maybe even keep a little note of each coffee that you consume, so you know, okay, these are the kinds of coffees you are enjoying and these are the ones you're not appreciating that much. And lastly, feel free to ask questions to people. Coffee lovers love talking about things that they enjoy the most, which is coffee. So definitely, if you have a coffee lover in your life, hit them up with questions. They're going to love answering them. Trust your instincts. See what people around you say. And yeah, I hope you have a fun experience. Thank you very much for spending time with me today. I hope you did learn something and try some of these methods, especially the tea strainer method. It's so easy. It's a no-brainer for anybody to get started. If you enjoy that, you can try a French press, a pour over, a cold brew, anything that catches your fancy. And yeah, I hope to see you all someday in another event, or maybe share a cup of coffee in the future ourselves. And yeah, until then, I hope you have many enjoyable cups of coffee. Thank you.